In this video, we'll see how we can use what are called z-scores to compare results from two different normal distributions. Standardized testing. We all hate it, but it's a fact of life for just about any school you want to get into. Many standardized test scores are normally distributed, with lots of mid-range test scores, and then fewer scores at the low and high ends. But every standardized test has different ranges that those scores fall into. Let's say you're trying to decide whether you want to go to medical school or law school. So you take the most common standardized tests to get into each. You get a 515 on the MCAT, which is used for admission to med school, and a 172 on the LSAT, which is used for admission to law school. Both of these tests have scores that are normally distributed. But how can we compare these scores and decide which one is better? The key is to rescale both scores to what's called the standard normal distribution, or z-distribution. In some sense, the z-distribution is the simplest possible normal distribution, having a mean of 0 and a standard deviation of 1. What we're going to do is take our two test results and turn them into standardized scores, also known as z-scores, which will rescale, that is, standardize them, to fit the z-distribution, and essentially tell us how many standard deviations above or below the mean each test score is. For the MCAT, the mean score is 501, and the standard deviation is 10.8. So clearly our score of 515 is above average. But just how far above average? That's where the z-score comes in handy. We calculate the z-score by taking our test score, x, subtracting the mean, mu, and then dividing the result by the standard deviation, sigma. When we do that in this case, we get a z-score of about 1.296, which means that a score of 515 on the MCAT is about 1.296 standard deviations above the mean. Not too shabby. But let's see what happens when we look at the LSAT, which has a mean of 151 and a standard deviation of 10. If we do the same calculation, we end up getting a z-score of 2.1, which means that in this case, your test score on the LSAT is 2.1 standard deviations above the mean. That's a lot more impressive. So comparing these two z-scores, we can see that the LSAT score is better because it has a higher z-score. It essentially means that your score on the LSAT is further above average than the MCAT score, based on how many standard deviations above the mean it is. That's what z-scores do for us. They level the playing field, so we can better put our results in context.